What drives a person to commit an act so gruesome, so shocking, that it defies the boundaries of human comprehension? For Brigitte Harris, a soft-spoken woman from Queens, New York, the answer lies in a past drenched in unspeakable horrors. On a fateful summer day in 2007, Harris lured her father, Eric Goodridge, to her apartment. What followed was not a plea for reconciliation, but an act of calculated violence. She handcuffed him, gagged him, and mutilated him, leaving a crime scene that resembled a nightmare. The act wasn't fueled by greed or hatred, but by a haunting sense of justice, an attempt to ensure that no one else would endure what she had. Brigitte's story is not just about the crime. It's about a life marred by trauma, the failure of those around her to protect her, and a legal system that struggles to balance justice and vengeance. This essay dives deep into the harrowing tale of Brigitte Harris, exploring the chilling events that led to her father's death, the abuse that shattered her world, and the legal battle that captivated a nation. Brigitte Harris was born in New York City in 1981, but her life was far from the idyllic picture often associated with childhood. At just 2 years old, her mother abandoned her, leaving Brigitte and her siblings to be raised by relatives. These homes, however, were far from safe havens. They were places where abuse was not only present but rampant. At the center of her suffering was her father, Eric Goodridge, a Liberian immigrant. Goodridge, who presented himself as a charismatic and authoritative figure, harbored a dark and predatory nature. When Brigitte was only 3 years old, the abuse began. Over the years, Goodridge subjected his daughter to a horrifying routine of sexual abuse that left Brigitte feeling powerless and trapped. Despite the torment she endured, Brigitte repeatedly sought help. She confided in family members and even a few friends, hoping someone would intervene. But her pleas were met with indifference, disbelief, or outright dismissal. The cultural stigma surrounding abuse in her community only deepened her isolation, as family members pressured her to remain silent to protect the family's honor. This silence allowed Goodridge to continue his reign of terror unchecked. By the time Brigitte reached her teenage years, the weight of her father's actions had taken a severe toll on her mental health. She suffered from chronic anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her relationships with others were strained, as the trauma she carried often left her feeling unworthy of love or companionship. Brigitte's life was a constant battle between attempting to move forward and being pulled back into the darkness of her past. She struggled to hold down jobs and found it difficult to trust anyone. The psychological scars her father left were as debilitating as the physical ones, and her hope for a normal life began to wane. In her mid-20s, Brigitte discovered that her father planned to bring 2 of her young nieces back to Liberia with him. She became consumed with fear, convinced that Goodridge would subject them to the same abuse she had endured. Desperation and a sense of responsibility ignited a spark within her, a spark that would lead to a moment of irreversible action. On July 28, 2007, Brigitte Harris invited her father to her apartment in Rockaway, Queens. It was a sweltering summer day, but inside her apartment, the atmosphere was far colder, charged with tension and hidden intentions. Goodridge believed they were meeting to discuss family matters, but Brigitte had a different plan. Once he arrived, Brigitte quickly restrained him, using handcuffs to secure him to a chair. She gagged him with a towel to muffle any screams and placed duct tape over his mouth. Then, in an act that would shock even the most seasoned investigators, she retrieved a scalpel and severed his penis. Brigitte later explained that her intention was not to kill her father, but to ensure he could never harm another child. However, the crime took an unexpected and fatal turn. Goodridge began to struggle for air, and within minutes, he was dead from asphyxiation. Panicked but resolute, Brigitte called 911 and confessed to her actions. The operator described her voice as calm, yet filled with remorse. "I didn't mean to kill him," she said, "but he was going to hurt them." When the police arrived, they found Brigitte sitting on the floor, her hands shaking, but her resolve unbroken. Brigitte Harris was arrested on the spot, and charged with second-degree murder. The case immediately became a media sensation, with headlines labeling her everything from a vengeful vigilante to a cold-blooded killer. Public opinion was deeply divided. Some saw her as a hero, a woman who had taken justice in her own hands after being failed by every system designed to protect her. Others viewed her as a dangerous individual who had crossed a line that no one has the right to cross. The media delved into every aspect of her life, from her troubled childhood to the details of the crime scene. Sensationalist coverage painted her as a woman driven to madness, while more sympathetic outlets highlighted the abuse she had endured and the psychological toll it had taken. Brigitte's trial began in 2009, and it quickly became clear that this was more than a simple murder case. It was a trial that would force the jury and the public to confront uncomfortable questions about justice, abuse, and the limits of the law. The prosecution argued that Brigitte had premeditated the murder, pointing to the handcuffs, scalpel, and duct tape as evidence of a meticulously planned act. They described Goodridge's death as a brutal and calculated killing, emphasizing that no one has the right to take the law into their own hands, regardless of the circumstances. The defense painted a very different picture. They presented Brigitte as a deeply traumatized woman who had been driven to the brink by years of unaddressed abuse. Her attorney argued that Brigitte's actions, while extreme, were born out of a desperate need to protect her nieces. The defense also highlighted the systemic failures that had left her with no other recourse, emphasizing the cultural stigma and familial pressure that silenced her cries for help. Brigitte herself took the stand, recounting her harrowing experiences in painstaking detail. Her testimony was raw and emotional, leaving many in the courtroom in tears. She spoke of her father's monstrous actions and the helplessness she felt knowing he planned to continue his cycle of abuse with her nieces. In the end, the jury was swayed by the defense's argument. Brigitte was convicted of the lesser charge of second-degree manslaughter, a verdict that acknowledged the abuse she suffered while also holding her accountable for her father's death. Brigitte was sentenced to 5 to 15 years in prison. She served her time at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, where she was known as a quiet and introspective inmate. Her time behind bars was marked by reflection and healing, as she sought to come to terms with the weight of her actions and the trauma that had defined her life. While in prison, Brigitte participated in therapy sessions and support groups, finding solace among other women who had endured similar experiences. She also began writing, documenting her thoughts and experiences in an attempt to process her pain and find a sense of closure. Brigitte was granted parole in August 2012, having served 5 years. Upon her release, she expressed a desire to advocate for other survivors of abuse, using her story as a platform to raise awareness about the long-term impact of trauma and the need for systemic change. Brigitte Harris's case remains a powerful and polarizing story. For some, she is a symbol of resilience and empowerment, a woman who stood up to her abuser when no one else would. For others, her actions serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of vigilantism and the complexities of justice. The case also sparked important conversations about the societal and systemic factors that contribute to abuse. It highlighted the need for better resources and support for survivors, as well as the importance of breaking the silence surrounding familial and cultural stigmas. Brigitte's story has been the subject of numerous documentaries and true crime shows, including episodes of Snapped and Deadly Women. Each retelling serves as a reminder of the human capacity for both suffering and survival, as well as the difficult moral questions that arise when justice and vengeance collide. The case of Brigitte Harris is not a simple one. It is a story steeped in pain, survival, and a desperate quest for justice. Her life, marked by unimaginable trauma, culminated in an act that forever changed her and those around her. While her actions were undeniably extreme, they force us to grapple with the complexities of human behavior, the failures of the systems meant to protect us, and the thin line between victim and perpetrator. In the end, Brigitte Harris's story serves as both a cautionary tale and a call to action. It reminds us of the deep and lasting scars that abuse leaves on its victims and the urgent need for systemic change. Her journey sheds light on a troubling reality. When the institutions designed to protect fail, individuals may take justice into their own hands, with tragic consequences. Brigitte Harris's case is a stark reminder of the responsibility society holds in preventing abuse and protecting its most vulnerable members. Her cries for help were met with indifference, a reflection of the cultural and systemic barriers that prevent many survivors from seeking or receiving support. This silence allowed Eric Goodridge to continue his predatory behavior unchecked, not only harming Brigitte, but potentially endangering others. The societal tendency to protect abusers in the name of family honor, or to avoid airing dirty laundry, perpetuates cycles of abuse. This cultural phenomenon isn't unique to Brigitte's community, but is prevalent in many societies around the world. Her case brings into sharp focus the importance of fostering environments where victims feel safe to come forward and where their claims are taken seriously from the outset. Since her release, Brigitte has channeled her experiences into advocacy, speaking out about the long-term impacts of abuse and the need for systemic change. Her voice, though once silenced, has become a powerful tool in raising awareness and fostering dialogue around these critical issues. Through public appearances, interviews, and written works, Brigitte has worked to break the silence surrounding abuse, giving hope and solidarity to others who have endured similar traumas. Her story resonates not only as a cautionary tale, but as a beacon of resilience, emphasizing that even in the face of profound suffering, there is the potential for healing and growth. Brigitte's case places more than just her actions under scrutiny. It puts society itself on trial. Her story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the roles we play, as individuals, communities, and institutions, in perpetuating or preventing cycles of abuse. Had her cries for help been met with intervention and support, could this tragedy have been averted? What systemic changes are necessary to ensure that future survivors don't find themselves cornered into such desperate measures? These are questions we must grapple with, using Brigitte's experience as both a warning and a catalyst for change. The story of Brigitte Harris defies easy categorization. It is a tale of unimaginable suffering, moral ambiguity, and the desperate lengths to which a person will go to protect the innocent. Her actions, though extreme, were born out of a profound sense of duty and a lifetime of unacknowledged pain. In the end, Brigitte's case leaves us with more questions than answers. What does justice truly look like for survivors of abuse? How can we, as a society, better support those who have been failed by the systems meant to protect them? And where do we draw the line between justice and vengeance? Brigitte Harris's story serves as a chilling reminder of the human capacity for both endurance and action in the face of adversity. It challenges us to reflect on the societal structures that perpetuate harm and to work toward a future where stories like hers are not tragedies, but tales of early intervention and healing. For as long as systemic failures persist, the line between victim and perpetrator will remain perilously thin, and justice will continue to wear shades of gray.